Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another Breakfast with Blaha. And today I'm having steak, brown rice, and broccoli. Breakfast of champions. Anyway, I'll change this up a little bit through the week. This isn't actually the only things I eat. I have days that are more oat and yogurt based. But let's talk a little bit about back off work on barbell movements. All right, this is something I get clients who are confused with. I get people in the comments who are confused. They'll say, Jason, your back off work is lighter than it should be sometimes. Some of your clients, it seems like it is. And when I try to do stuff, I can't do as much. And here's the reality. Usually, for all of the training systems I advocate, I don't program for non-novices to where you come in and just do a bunch of sets of 5s and 10s. Right? We always do some sort of primary work. It's either conjugate or it's some sort of 5-3-1. So what does that mean? That means on one lift, in some cases two for speed work, it means we're either coming in and we're hitting a training max or a max of some type, which again fatigues us. Number two, we're doing speed work of some type, which again is going to be relatively high sets. Or we're running, again, some sort of 5-3-1-ish type wave to where we're building to a heavy peak set, whether it's 5, 3, 1, 4, 7, because we might be doing a plus set. We build to a really all-out set. You're going to be fatigued afterwards. And, people will hear that and they'll say, well, if we're fatigued, does it still count? Of course it still counts. If you're doing straight sets, it's different because it's your primary training stimulus. In other words, I tell people if you're going to come in and do sets of 10, it's how you're going to start your workout. Yeah, it's going to need to be heavier. You may need to be doing 70%. But here's what I find. With most of my lifters, they can't sustain 10s for 70% after doing main work. And if they do, it beats them up. So even if they can do it, we come back over to that point about leaving reps in reserve. Even if they can do it, doesn't mean they should do it. However, I commonly get lifters who say max effort day. If I have them do back off work with the same lift, they can't do 3 sets of 10 at 70%. Sometimes they can't do 5 reps. Like you put them at 70% of that same exercise, they might get 9 or 10, then they get 8, then they get 5. And nobody's in here doing 5 sets of 10. They're not. And then when they try to do this, what happens? They're just beat up. They're fatigued, they're tired. Set quality drops. And I used to do a lot of this. So a lot of my clients are like, Coach, you used to make us do this. I did. But I ran different groups, and here's what I found. Clients who I didn't make do it didn't have to deload off, and they weren't as beat up. And they got just as strong. They got just as big. We always train in a way that leaves a couple reps in reserve. Barring when we test an AMRAP, you make more progress. And here's the thing. Here's what we're looking at. We're looking at effective reps. We're looking at effective volume. And I've said in the past, well, a lot of the data shows that rest times, and this is true when we're talking rest times. If you have to reduce weight because your rest times are low, it does cause less hypertrophy. Why? Because upper threshold fibers aren't ready to fire again. And so we could try to make, and I have tried to make that same argument in the past, but I don't think it holds up. I don't think that it holds up under scrutiny. I don't think it holds up under the real world. And I don't think it fully holds up under logic. Well, if that's the case, then if we're doing enough volume that we're having to use lighter weight, then, we're not hitting those upper threshold fibers either. But we are, aren't we? Because they've had rest times. And the reason they don't get hit again is because they got fatigued from a challenging set and you had too short of a break. So therefore, less muscle fibers get recruited per set, we get less growth in the research. But that's because people are rushing 90 seconds. And they still grew. They just grew less than the people with the longer breaks. And that's an important takeaway. It was just less effective. Didn't mean they didn't grow. They didn't make good gains. They made good gains in those studies. Right? They gained muscle, measurable amounts. So what am I saying here? Well, if you're resting at least 3 minutes between these sets, guess what? Your upper threshold muscle fibers can be recruited again at that point. Your overall fatigue is higher because of the heavy work. Now, some people will argue there's some data that because you did the heavy work first, you're attenuating those upper threshold muscle fibers more effectively in each set. So in spite of the fatigue, you're still coming in and working everything again. And if this lets us get more total training volume in, we are recruiting and fatiguing a higher variety of muscle fibers. What does that mean for muscle mass? Well, it means more muscle mass, right? We got more total quality sets in and gained more fatigue. More muscle fibers reached a higher fatigue state for hypertrophy. Well, that means you're going to get bigger. And at a certain point, all myofibrillar growth contributes to strength. People have to keep that in mind. A bigger muscle has more strength potential. Now, we could argue about myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic, right? We could make that argument. But I'm not telling anyone to do a bunch of 30 rep sets here, are we? I'm talking about doing sets of 10. If it's causing more myofibrillar growth, even in more intermediate fibers, do they not contribute to maxes? Of course they do. Do they contribute to strength? Of course they do. So you're not going to be able to handle the same weights as the volume goes up, particularly after primary work. You just can't. But if you keep the set quality high, we generate a good amount of fatigue, we get a lot of effective reps, you will maximize hypertrophy. But here's the other thing. Because you're not pushing that bleeding edge, it's like I've talked about going to failure and stuff. You're not pushing that bleeding edge on any one set. You're getting good challenging work with some effective reps and quality volume. You recover from it easier. And if we can recover from it easier, we can get more total quality training in per week. Because it's like I say often, it's not what you stimulate in the gym, it's what you recover from that causes you to grow. And that's the take home here. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.